So I'm Ian Barber and I'm from the University of Otago. I teach in the Department of Anthropology and Archaeology at Otago, and I've been working with Hokotehi Moriori Trust since 2010 on an ongoing collaborative archaeological project. We're in the first instance concerned with the care, preservation and interpretation of the Rākau Momori, the engraved kōpi trees out here on the island. Then PhD student of mine who was working with me, who's now got his PhD, Justin Maxwell, and is a postdoctoral fellow on a project I'm directing, is also working with me very closely. And our mutual concern and passion out here in particular is the care, the preservation, and ultimately the respect that is due these really important novel engraved trees. I mean, they really are novel. There's nothing like them anywhere else in Polynesia, and really among other traditions where people do in fact indent or carve trees, they stand out as being very unique. So, and of course, as we all know, they're threatened, they're disappearing. So you know, we're really passionate about working with Moriori to try and preserve and save this internationally important archaeological cultural resource. So I think that the key to our project is this word collaboration. You know, so important really that you know, we don't just come in as the experts to tell Moriori what to do. Quite the contrary, we're coming in and offering our input and our services, but in a way that where we seek to understand what the cultural values are, what the concerns are of Moriori, so that our recommendations and our research, our other mahi with Moriori is respectful, and that really is a lovely process. And as we've worked through various projects with Moriori, we've had the support and opportunity to do some archaeological excavations around some of the Rākau Momori, so as to get radiocarbon dates, so that we can, by the argument of association, at least start to get some feel for the time period when people were engaging with these carved trees, or excuse me, engraved trees. Carved is probably not quite the right word. Engraving is a broader term. There was some carving. Some of the trees were carved through to the sapwood, but in many cases I think we're dealing with something like an impression rather than a cut into the bark. So yeah, but you know, so we've had the opportunity, as I say, with full support and authorisation, undertake some archaeological excavations. We've done some scanning work at Nunuku's cave as well, and that's very exciting. Lots of survey work, and in all of that project, we've been working with the full support and consent of Hokotehi Moriori Trust, and it's just been an incredibly enjoyable process. And in my opinion, this is the way archaeology should be done. Archaeology should be done in connection with descendant communities. It should be done so that the archaeologist is listening to and responding to the community, working actively with the community, and so that the perspectives of the indigenous descendant community and the archaeological science are blended. They may not necessarily agree with each other, and that's not a problem, in my opinion. I mean, you know, archaeological science is imperfect. We don't have all the answers, and it may well be that we have to wait till we get all the information in, and in an interim position, or from an interim perspective, maybe, you know, there might seem to be some subtle disagreements. And I think the main thing is that the two branches of knowledge are, in a project like this, in a collaborative project, are engaged, are integrated, that there's full communication, understanding of what's going on, what each party bring to the larger process. And I think it produces a really rich cultural history and archaeology, and it's just been a privilege to be involved in it. Let me give you a very nice example. Moriori say that kōpi was brought to the Chatham Islands. Now, traditionally, botanists have assumed that kōpi were always here, although in the mid-20th century, a couple of scientists and botanists started to speculate that perhaps kōpi may have been introduced. And increasingly, especially in the 21st century, as people have looked at the vegetation history record, they've looked at the pollen record, there's absolutely no evidence for kōpi in terms of pollen or any other subfossil remains before humans arrived here. Recent genetic work, DNA work, suggests as well that the Chatham Islands kōpi, the kōpi on Rēkohu, represent a relatively narrow genetic base that appears to be derived from the mainland populations. So, I mean, it all suggests that the kōpi was indeed brought here by people, which is exactly what Moriori traditions tell us. So that's a nice blending, I think, of the science and the tradition. The other nice blending is Moriori's idea that the idea of Moriori that the kōpi were cared for and managed and gardened almost, and that's really a notion that our research, particularly the work that Justin Maxwell and I have done, is very, very, our work is very supportive of that notion. We're seeing that in terms of historical ecology, kōpi, it is challenging to establish kōpi in this environment, and given how prolific and extensive the forests were, how healthy they were, and well established they were, we feel that really there has to have been some active engagement and management, just as Moriori traditions suggest. And so, once again, we've got this nice blending, if you like, of tradition and archaeology. These are internationally significant cultural items. It's an enormous privilege to be involved with this mahi, and there's no question in my mind that as these resources become better known, not just in New Zealand but around the world, that this will heighten the profile of Moriori, the interest in Moriori, and I just feel enormously privileged to be involved in such an exciting project, which is helping support the Moriori Renaissance, and is really something that I think increasingly people, not just in New Zealand but around the world, will begin to notice and to take a great deal of interest in. And these important cultural archaeological materials are a significant part of that.